Welcome to the Western Ballad podcast series, with talks on traditional spiritual teaching and its application in the world today. The intention of the series is to offer something useful for those who are drawn to study themselves and engage practice on the spiritual path. New talks are posted twice each month. The content of the talks is for informational purposes only, and not to provide any kind of counseling, medical, or professional advice. This podcast is titled The Power of Identification. The talk was given by Red Hawk on March 2nd, 2024 via Zoom. Red Hawk is an acclaimed poet and the author of 13 books, including Self-Observation, Self-Remembering, The Way of the Wise Woman, Return to the Mother, and Book of Lamentations. In this talk, he discusses identification as the great law that governs all human life and as the source of all human problems. He engaged those who attended the live talk in a conversation about what identification is, how it consumes attention, who we are in essence, blocks love, and can be worked with consciously. Red Hawk asserts that identification has one aim only, the survival of the false self, and that its hold can loosen through the practice of presence, that is, self-remembering and self-observation. If there is benefit in this talk for you, please consider sharing the link to it or writing a review on social media or on one of the podcast platforms. Red Hawk.
So I'm going to begin, as I always do, by the law of invocation. The law of invocation is a way of invoking the divine. And by doing so, it creates special circumstances. It creates a special condition in which the help of the divine is available to us, provided we can remain with present attention. And the law of invocation was taught by that good master Jesus when he said, "Where two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be also." And when Christ uses the pronoun my and I, it is the divine speaking. So to make it clearer, where two or more are gathered in the name of the divine, there the divine will be by law obligated to appear. And so in the law of invocation, we use one of the names of the divine. It could be Jesus Christ or Krishna or Buddha or Ramakrishna or Rama or Papa Ramdas. But I am of the school of Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, of Mr. Lee Lozowick's school. Mr. Lee Lozowick was the Western arm of the school of Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, the beggar saint of Tiruvannamalai, a God-realized being. So any name of any God-realized being, when invoked by people who wish to work and to be present, automatically, by law, summons the divine. So I begin with the name of Yogi Ram Surat Kumar. You may substitute any other name you wish in this process. Other names will do. Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Jai Guru Raya. Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Jai Shri Kepali Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Guru Maharaj Yogi Ram Surat Kumar. Jai Shri Kepali Yogi Ram Surat Kumar, Guru Maharaj Yogi Ram Surat Kumar. We are now in what is called in the work a sacred, divine, conscious, invocational work chamber in which the divine is present and is a source of great help and has come because there is good food here And the divine must feed just as all sentient beings must feed. And at the same time, the presence of the divine feeds us, provided I can remain with present attention. So the first thing I want to do is to offer to anyone who wishes a brief process in order to invoke what the work calls the second attention. All sentient beings are born with a mechanical attention, and it works for the survival of the being. That mechanical attention is habitual, it's unconscious, and it gets me through the day, hopefully without harm. I may drive from point A to point B. And when I get to point B, I can't tell you a thing that happened along the way because my mind was elsewhere, my emotions were in turmoil, and I simply wasn't paying close attention, but the mechanical attention got me through safely. I put down my glasses in one room and I go to the next room for a moment and I can't remember where my glasses were and I search all over the house. Sometimes they're on my head. Mechanical attention. But the invocation of the divine, and by a process of conscious labor, one may invoke the second attention, which is a conscious attention, a present attention. So we do this now. If you wish, please assume an erect posture. I'm standing. You don't have to stand if you don't want to. Sometimes it helps if you stand. You may if you wish. No one is obligated in this space. But in order to further enrich and empower this space, the more one cooperates with the struggle to be present as attention, then the more help is available to us all. So I assume an erect posture. Because in the mechanical world, I have a various library of different postures, all of which are mechanical and habitual, all of which are unconscious, and each of those postures invokes a mood, an emotional mood. Each of those postures invokes an attitude. Each of those postures invokes a train of mechanical thought and emotional processes. And I am a victim of them. And I am identified with them. But upright posture, an erect posture, is a conscious move. It's not mechanical. And Zen Buddhism calls this the awakened form. So then I bring attention down into the body and relocate attention, conscious placement of attention at the solar plexus abdominal hara region, lower down in the body. This conscious movement of attention is not mechanical, and it is the second attention which is now being invoked. You are that attention. You are awake as present attention. In the present, in the body. Now sense the breath in this new location, locating the center of gravity somewhere around the abdomen, solar plexus, hara region. Sense the body from that position, and then sense the breath. Let the breath come in and out easily without directing it or controlling it. Let the exhalation go all the way down to the base of the spine. And on the inhalation, let the inhalation fill the whole front of the body all the way down to the abdomen. And if you wish, on the inhalation, at the solar plexus, which is that soft spot where the ribs join the sternum, to yourself say I on the inhalation. And on the exhalation, say am. And allow the exhalation, the am, to radiate throughout the entire cellular structure and into the field of awareness which surrounds us. I And what this does is it allows the body to extract from the air what many ancient schools have called prana, a finer, subtler energy, which feeds the being, it feeds the cellular structure, it radiates out from the body to feed the divine and all beings above us in scale, the earth, our sun. And with the presence of the divine in this empowered invocational chamber, it becomes possible for me to remain present as present attention longer before I get carried away by identification. I am. Now sense the whole body from head to toe. And with the breath and the radiation of this finer energy, allow the breath to relax the body. And if you're standing, be seated. So at any time during this talk, if you find yourself carried away in thought or emotion, use these few simple ways: erect posture, conscious placement of attention at the lower regions of the body, sensing the breath, sensing the body, to come back and try to hear what's said in this chamber, not just listen, which is mechanical. The ears do that. It's interesting because that good Master Jesus, whenever he gave a Dharma talk, at the end of his talk, he would always say, "Let those who have ears to hear, hear." And clearly he was speaking of hearing as a subtler, different scale of taking in information. In our case, I'm trying to speak from lower down in the body, not from the mind alone, from some prearranged script. Although I have notes in front of me, I'm trying to speak from the present. And so what gets said is always useful because it comes not from some prearranged idea. I'm going to begin by saying some things which are very challenging because the subject I have chosen to share with you is a subject of the utmost importance. It is the largest possible subject for one engaged in spiritual practice or in life, period, because it's a matter of life or death. So I'm going to begin with several sweeping generalizations, which themselves are very challenging. And so I urge you not to believe what I have to say. Please don't do that. The moment you agree with me, you're already identified. And you've made an image of me and of the words being said, and they aren't being challenged or questioned. Please do not trust me. You mustn't trust me. That places you immediately again in the usual victim position, which we've been in also all of our lives, taking the word of other people. If anything is said in this chamber, which creates a vibratory response in your heart or your emotions, then investigate and verify for yourself. The only way I can ever know whether a thing is true is from my own direct experience, period. Not because some expert, not even some guru or master has said, but from my own experience, I have verified it. Then I know whether it's true or not. Otherwise, I'm immediately identified and in the victim position yet again. So the first sweeping generalization I want to make is that the human race is a slave race. We are mammals, mammal bodies. And in that mammal body dwells a non-human entity with two aspects, presence and attention. And identification has captured and consumes me. Identification is the great law which governs all human life. It controls all of human life on earth. We are enslaved. I am a slave. I am enslaved by identification, and I do not make any pretense or pretend otherwise. I have spent 40 years of conscious labor in the work in an effort to loosen the hold that identification has on I am, attention and presence in a mammal body. And I will tell you quite frankly that most of my day is spent in identification, with moments of remembering myself and being present as present attention. And I am very quickly taken and swept away by identification yet again. And I come back again. And I begin again. And I am swept away and enslaved. So, the human race is a slave race, and the amazing thing is that we do not know it. I am blind to it. I believe I am free. I believe I have free attention. I believe I can choose. All of that is a lie. And I will go so far as to say that all mechanical suffering on the face of the earth is 100% caused by identification. I will say that every human problem on earth is caused 100% by identification. And that what I call myself, I, me, myself, Robert Moore, Red Hawk, is 100% identification and imagination. There is no such entity as Robert Moore, Red Hawk. It does not exist. It is a label that the ego structure is placed upon the body for the convenience of identification, of talking about itself. So when we speak of identification, we have to speak of imagination too, because they go hand in hand. Imagination and identification are identical twins. They work together to keep me enslaved. Either for most of my day, I am 100% identified inside with what's going on, thought, emotion, various tensions in the body, completely captured attention. Or I am 100% identified outside with what's coming in, various impressions. Putin, Netanyahu, Trump, my neighbor, the dog barking next door, the weather, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Christians, the Jews, the Hindus, the Muslims, the whites, the blacks, the Hispanics, food, various objects, but mostly and most importantly, I am totally identified with this body and with this ego structure, which calls itself Bob Moore, Red Hawk, I, me, myself, totally. So I'm going to read you some quotes now. And then I want to go a little further with this. The first quote I'm going to read is from P.D. Ouspensky's In Search of the Miraculous. And here he is issuing a warning which could not be clearer to one who has the ears to hear. So can I take in this information from a bodily position, not from the mind, where it just gets stored as more junk? Because I will tell you frankly that what I have to say tonight, it has no importance whatsoever. It couldn't be less important unless I'm able to take it in and act on it. Words are just absolutely wasted unless I act on them now in this chamber to be present attention in this body, in this space. So from Ouspensky, this is a quote. Man is always in a state of identification. Only the object of identification changes. Identifying is one of our most terrible foes because it penetrates everywhere. In order to free himself from identifying, a man must be constantly on guard and be merciless with himself. That is, he must not be afraid of seeing all the subtle and hidden forms which identifying takes. It is necessary to see and to study identifying to its very roots in oneself. Man cannot do anything sensible when he is in a state of identifying. A man becomes a thing, a piece of flesh. He loses even the small semblance of a human being. Identifying is the chief obstacle to self-remembering. A man who identifies with anything is unable to remember himself. So long as a man identifies or can be identified, he is the slave of everything that can happen to him. Freedom is, first of all, freedom from identification. Unquote. Can I observe whatever reactions take place in me without identifying with them? Does the mind react? Is there an emotional response? Can present attention remain in place, embodied in breath and sensation, and not move? Remain actively still? Or do my opinions immediately spring forward and demand to be voiced? Do my objections arise? Am I offended? So one of the roots of my identification is self-importance. I've been working on self-importance for many, many months, directly and intensely. Self-importance is a stick with two ends. One end of that stick is the self-importance of boasting and boosting myself to look good in front of others, making myself appear to be someone of importance. The other end of that stick, same stick, self-importance, is what I chose as an infant and a young boy, which is self-hatred. I'm no good. Both of them are ego structure. Both of them are egotistical. Both of them are self-importance. Both of them place me at the center of the universe, at the very heart of this ego structure, which the work calls false personality and I call false self. At the very heart and center of this ego structure, this false self, is what the work calls chief feature. I call it blind spot because we are blind to it. We cannot see it. It dominates our lives. It dominates my life. My chief feature is I'm no good, and it's accompanied by its most important cohort, shame. And I've been identified with I'm no good and shame my whole life. And for a great part of my life, I have enacted one scenario after another to validate the truth of that particular chief feature. Every one of you listening has a chief feature which you have spent your whole life validating. I'm going to quote now from Mr. Eckhart Tolle, a friend of mine. I don't mean a friend I've ever met, but a friend who has helped me in this work. This is the quote, all the misery on the planet. I'm going to go back to Ouspensky, quote, man is always in a state of identification. These two men are using the word always and all, which immediately should make me suspicious. And until I've verified it for myself, I better not trust anything it said. Eckhart Tolle, quote, all the misery on the planet arises due to a personalized sense of me or us. That covers up the essence of who you are. When you are unaware of that inner essence, in the end, you always create misery. It's as simple as that. When you don't know who you are, you create a mind-made self as a substitute for your beautiful divine being and cling to that fearful and needy self, protecting and enhancing that false sense of self then becomes your primary motivating force. Unquote. And I'm going to read one more quote, and then I'm going to open this thing up so that we can help each other. This quote is from my master, Mr. Lee Loswick, from the book Just This 365. Number 7. It's what he calls the radical confrontation. Although a lot is happening in our lives, it begins to dawn on us that we're not making the breakthrough. What gives? What's the problem? Some ask. There's only ever one problem. I repeat, there's only ever one problem, an unwillingness to radically confront the need to cease all identification, unquote. All right, here's what I'd like to do then. I would like to see if together, all of us, whoever can contribute anything, no matter how seemingly minuscule or small or apparently unimportant, in an empowered invocational chamber, there is no such thing as a stupid statement. I would like all of us together to see if we can define what identification is. What does it mean and how does it manifest? Anything you have to contribute which you think may be helpful, I'd like to hear from you. What is identification and how does it manifest?
To me, while getting good at the notion of not identifying too much, not being captured by things that come at us and staying centered in ourselves and being able to feel the vibrations in the heart, the body while we're dealing with stuff. There are difficult people in the world, is I guess my point. What are the techniques and approaches that we can take while we're doing this work to also not let those people run us over and harm us and get the better of us? We need to live our lives. My belief is to kind of stand up for what is good, the basic goodness within us, and bring that out into the world and not let those who are not aligned that way get the better of us. What are the approaches that we can take to deal with those practical aspects of things while we're also doing this work?
It's an excellent question. So I'm going to make a brief response because what you've asked are what can we do? What successful things work in order to loosen the hold of identification? So I'm going to say just this right now, because first we have to define what we're talking about. So if we can agree on what we mean by identification, then we can talk about ways that we can deal with it successfully. So I'm going to put off your question because it's a valuable question. I'm only going to say this much right now, and that is, whoever I am identified with owns me. So let's define what is identification and how does it manifest. And I hear your question and I will get back to it because it's crucial. What is identification and how does it manifest? We are looking to define the term.
For me, identification is loss of focus, loss of my focus, the essence of me. And boy, I'm in a house full of things I identify with, and my work and my fear. I just have so many identifications. When I lose my focus, that's when the identification with my fears, with Putin, with Trump, Netanyahu, that's when they start, is when I lose my focus. And if I stay focused, I'm still doing work in the world, but it feels different. It feels completely different.
You've said some very important things. One of the most important things you said is identification is fear. Identification blocks love. There's only two choices for the human on this planet. The earth is a school for incomplete souls, for flawed souls. We come to earth in order to confront our flaw, to learn to deal with our flaw, to see it and feel it and transform it. There's only two choices because the earth is a school for flawed souls. It's a kindergarten. That is, the curriculum is very, very simple. There's only two forces that work on this planet, love or fear. Identification blocks love. That's fear. Fear blocks love. Fear is the absence of love. Identification is the absence of love. That's what fear is. The second thing is loss of focus. Identification captures and consumes attention, which is what I am, my essence. So, of course, I lose my essence because identification eats me.
I was just going to say the cool thing is that the school of life, of earth, is love. Whoa, it's so potent.
It is love. The divine is love. That good Master Jesus made it so simple for us fools. God is love. Love and God are the same. So love is the way the divine manifests in this reality. Love is the language the divine uses to communicate with its creation in this reality. And identification blocks that. God bless you, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar.
I think that this inquiry is allowing me to see identification as an attachment.
Yes, attachment. Excellent word. Thank you for that word. Attachment is exactly the point, isn't it? Identification is subject to objects, to people, to ideas, to belief systems, to anything which is not love, which is not present. Identification is loss of focus. Identification is fear. Identification is attachment. Now we're getting somewhere. We are defining a term so we can agree on what it is we're talking about here.
To me, identification is the separate person I think I am. My way of looking at things, my psychological structure, my perspective that I'm right, my body. It seems so tacit, but how it manifests to me is a perpetual drive to stay alive, to maintain that self-sense.
Survival of self. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what's beyond that, I think that's what the spiritual path is about.
Identification has one aim only: the survival of the false self, the ego structure. And it is always on the alert to defend itself against conscious work. It is always on the alert to defend itself against the practice of presence, which is self-remembering, self-observation. Identification is survival of the ego structure, period. End of story. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about your children or your wife or your lover. It doesn't care about anything but survival of the self, period.
It doesn't care about my conscience.
It has no conscience. It blocks the effect of conscience. It blocks the effect of love, because in love, the self begins to disintegrate.
It would seem that being undefended would be another part of that. Identification happens because I forget myself.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Yeah. I forget who I am. You mentioned undefended. Can you say what you mean by that?
I notice that some things as they arise impact part of my body. And that impact tends to then create a story. And to notice that impact and short circuit the story would be kind of what I mean by being undefended, to let that impact be, feel it, feel my feelings, feel the feelings without the story. The story is the defense.
That's a wonderful thing you've just said. The identification is a defense against feeling. It's why men so rarely have deep feeling. The identification won't allow them to, because their image as a man is threatened by deep feeling. And the other thing you mentioned, which is so important, is that the ego structure, I, me, my, myself, this false self, is composed entirely of a story. The false self is a story. It is the personal history of the mammal on the planet. The being has no personal history. The being has no story.
And that story is a fiction.
It's an illusion. That's a valuable contribution. Thank you so much, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar.
For me, the attachments, identification is just food for the illusion. It just gets you farther away from yourself, from the witness. And the witness has no judgment. It doesn't change. It's just the truth. It never changes.
You've said two valuable things. So I want to go over both of them. First of all, identification feeds the illusion of self, period. That's its aim. And secondly, judgment is one of its primary tools to capture and consume attention. Judgment is absolutely essential to identification.
Yeah. It pushes you further away from yourself. You've been thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yes, very important, very valuable. Thank you.
Identification, a false sense of self. How it manifests in me, I would say, would be through imagination. I'm always constantly imagining this person participating in these things, and this is what life's about. And it's a real hard one to let go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I read and meditate, and shoot, nothing seems to alleviate it. The only time it alleviates is when I put my attention on the breath, on the body, but it's only short. It's seconds.
Yeah. See, I love what you've said. You've said some really honest things, and I want to go over them. Number one, anyone who is sincerely practicing the practice of presence, working on themselves, sees that they are powerless to hold attention for a very long period of time at all in the present until they're captured by imagination and identification and immediately taken away. And anybody who has struggled with this subject has seen over and over again, I am helpless. I cannot hold my attention for long periods of time in the present and be aware of my body. And if I'm not conscious of the body, I am identified. If I'm not conscious of the body, I am identified. And so we begin again, over and over. And one of the ways that I can tell that you have worked and that you have had some success at work is that you're willing to be very honest about yourself, not trying to look good, not trying to impress people, but simply wanting to say something truthful in the hopes that it will make a difference to oneself. The mark of a person who's willing to work, to engage, is self-honesty. Most people lie about themselves in order to look good in front of others. I'm trying to be as honest as I can about myself so that one recognizes I am no authority here. I'm no master. I'm no guru. I'm no teacher. I'm just an ordinary practitioner who is struggling with the power of identification. And I will tell you frankly that over 40 years of working on myself, I have not mastered identification, but I have loosened its hold. So I'm reminded of water dripping on a stone. We know from geology that water dripping on a stone over a long period of time can create a depression in that stone. And then the depression over a long period of time grows deeper and deeper until finally, over a very long period of time, the water dripping on the stone makes a hole in the stone. Self-remembering, self-observation in my life are water dripping on that stone. And they have made an impression, and they have made a dent in the hold that identification has on me. I'd like to hear if there's anyone else who has anything they think might be valuable in contribution to defining what we're speaking of in identification.
I don't have much in the way of definitions, but you were talking earlier about the importance of proving things to ourselves, not taking secondhand, third-hand information. And one of the things I have not proved to myself is reincarnation, anything that comes after the death of the body. As far as I can tell, this body is it. I've read lots of stuff, lots of Buddhist stuff about rebirth and Bardo states. But to me, I am totally attached, identified with experiencing through this body, and there's nothing beyond that.
Me too.
So when I think about the demise of this slab of flesh, it's very sad because I'm so identified. Like, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this experiencing because that's all I know. I haven't proved to myself that there's anything after this body goes.
Yeah, all of that is rumors unverified.
Right.
All right. So there is this body. This is the body we're given. And I have verified this much, that the body exists as an objective feedback mechanism to help orient the attention in the present. It is an orientation device, just like a sailor sailing a ship at sea. Where am I? I'm either in imagination or I am here now in this body. If I'm not conscious of the body, I'm not conscious. So the body is an invaluable tool. And I'm with you. I am completely given over to direct experience, to questioning everything, even if Jesus said it, even if Yogi Ram Surat Kumar said it, even if Mr. Lee said it, my precious gurus. I know it's true when I see it for myself. I'm like the disciple Thomas, who had to stick his fingers in the wound in order to verify for himself that this was his master. Thomas doubted everything. So if you read the book of Thomas, you read the secret teachings of Jesus, which he gave only to Thomas, because Thomas questioned. Thomas doubted. Thomas wanted verification. So all the other disciples were mad at Thomas, very angry with Jesus, and would whisper at Thomas. They'd say, "What did he say? What did he say?" And Thomas wouldn't say. He said, "If I told you, you would stone me." All right, so now I'm going to shift gears because I'm very grateful for what you've given in terms of definition. I'm going to tell you what the practice of presence, self-remembering, and self-observation have done for me. They have not caused me to be free of the power of identification. But here's what they have done. They have allowed me to see my slavery. I feel my slavery. And I feel the horror of my slavery when I am caught by identification and am doing things which I hate, which violate conscience. When I say or do things which violate conscience, I suffer tremendous remorse. And that remorse is an invaluable, precious grace and mercy from our Creator, because remorse of conscience changes my heart. And this work that we do, self-remembering and self-observation, has changed my heart. And I use the example of my wife and my marriage to Chandrika, my beloved. My marriage is a treasure to me. It is the source of the most immense joy, and it is a miracle to me. Both Chandrika and I work together to practice working with identification. What this work has done for us is it has evolved the love that is between us to the stage of adoration. Adoration is the greatest treasure I've ever known. Adoration is the feminine, sacred heart of mercy. Adoration is the greatest treasure of my life. It is the pearl of great price, and it is the result of conscience awakening in me. This work has awakened conscience. So, when I am identified, which is all the time, it doesn't go as far as it once did in me before I awaken with a shock and begin again and remember myself. And for a moment, breathe, shift attention down lower in the body, sense the body. Present attention is love. That's my experience. Without present attention, love cannot reach me. This work has allowed conscience to guide me. And what I have verified for myself is that the will of God is conscience in me. When Jesus says, "Not my will, thy will be done," I used to ponder and struggle with that. How can I know the will of God? It's impossible. He's asking something impossible. He did it. I can't do it. It must be in all of us. This will of God, whatever God is and whatever you want to say it is, you can say it's love. I prefer that. Not so esoteric. Whatever the will of love is, conscience is the guide for that. This is from Maurice Nicole, Volume 2, Psychological Commentaries, page 622. Quote, "The work takes the place of real conscience until the latter is slowly awakened," unquote. So now, in the time remaining, I'd like to hear from all of you that wish to contribute. How are you working with your identification? Because every one of us is in that struggle, period. How are you working with identification, and what has it shown you, and what have you gained from that struggle? And I'll say, whatever arises in you, stay with it. Don't try to change it. Don't judge it. Stay with it, see it and feel it all the way through, and remain present to it. Present attention is loving it, whatever arises. Okay, what have you experienced? How are you working with identification? And what has it done for you? That work, that struggle.
Every time there's judgment, that's a red flag and an opportunity to reflect.
Beautiful. Me too. Judgment has become a huge red flag for me. A reminding factor is what the work calls it. When I'm in judgment, it almost immediately catches me up. And I remember myself. And I allow it to pass through me without judgment, without identification, without interfering, because I know it's a lie. All judgment is a lie. Thank you. God bless you. Yogi Ram Suraj Kumar. More.
Taking anything personally, which happens a lot.
Me too. That's true. And you know, the moment I'm offended, I know my self-importance is rearing its head. And it's a huge reminding factor for me to come back to the body, be conscious of the body, and be present attention. Anything which bothers me, upsets me, which offends me, and I'll tell you, my ego structure is so fragile, so delicate, so easily pricked and poked and offended that all the time I'm offended by something, including something like dropping my pen on the floor. I'm offended by it. Reminding factors to be present to love. And love is accepting without judgment all that I see. Stay with it. That's love. It's not Hollywood love. It's not romantic love. It's work love. It's objective love.
I thank you for saying that, because the word love is so abstract. You've just begun to define it.
In a practical way, right?
Yes.
Both feet on the ground. Barefoot love.
Yeah, people use it all the time. I'm going, what are they talking about?
What is your work with identification, and what has it given you?
Almost a perpetual state of low-grade sadness in the background.
Me too. Sorrow is what I call it. There is an ongoing sorrow in me which stems almost from my birth. I separated from my mother at birth, put up for adoption, put in one foster home after another. At 6 months, adopted by 2 drunks. And that sorrow, that loss, that separation. Identification is separation from the source. Identification is believing I am separate from the source of love. So, of course, sorrow is in every one of us, and we don't even recognize it anymore. It's so much a part of us.
Yeah, I don't mean only sorrow, personal sorrow. There's something else. Go to the supermarket. What a sad place.
Look, what you've said is very important. The earth is under tremendous pressure. The earth is being violently attacked by human race. There's wars everywhere. There's lying, cheating, raping, stealing. There's governments with bombs. The earth is under tremendous pressure, and this body is an earth body. It is constantly receiving emanations from the earth. And the earth is under enormous pressure, and we feel that pressure. So the sorrow we feel often is not personal, although identification immediately wants to make it about me. Many of us are feeling the sorrow of the planet, our mother, our source from whence the body came and to whom it will return. It is often objective sorrow we are feeling, and we don't even know it. Other people, anybody, what can you contribute to this?
I see it as you put it, enslavement, but there's also the other side. It's a double-sided blade. This enslavement also puts me aware of the bliss of life. Mother Earth has never stopped giving. I'm aware of the misuse. I'm aware of the wars, but there's also the beauty in everything. So it's perfect as it is. In a sense, you can notice that it's also there. Who gets mad? The character gets mad, not the self, the character.
Yes.
I don't know how to put it in words. It's difficult.
The ego structure gets mad.
Yeah.
It's not the self, absolutely. And what you've said is absolutely true, and it's important to say it. The earth operates under the law of unconditional love. It gives until it has nothing left to give. And the beauty is apparent if I have the eyes to see. Jesus, let those who have eyes to see. Beauty is everywhere because the earth is love.
Yeah.
And we don't see it because I'm identified. I don't see it. All I see is fear. And fear blocks my sight, so I cannot see the beauty.
Yeah, it's a veil.
Good. Thank you so much. Well said, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar. Other people, what can you say?
I look at man in general, and you could see the dysfunction, identification. And I go out and cut firewood. I go by myself with my dog. And so I always gaze at the forest and at the mountains. And nature doesn't have identification.
Right.
And it just gives me a calm or even a hope that maybe not in this lifetime, that man can achieve non-identification or the true I.
Never mind, man. Talk about me. Maybe in some lifetime I can.
Yes.
Mankind never will. Mankind as a whole is doing exactly what mankind was created to do. Food. Individuals can achieve something else. Mankind as a whole never will.
So what about things are more possible in a group than by themselves?
Absolutely, because by myself I lie all the time. In a group, somebody will step on my corns and offend me, and then I have an excellent opportunity to see. I want to read to you the aphorism from Mr. Gurdjieff's study house. This is aphorism number 5. This is a quote. Remember, you come here having already understood the necessity of struggling with yourself, only with yourself. Therefore, thank everyone who gives you the opportunity, unquote. And I can tell you that my struggle with identification has allowed me to arrive at the point where whoever offends me, whoever steps on my corns, I have been able to say thank you and be grateful to them and only praise them. And I guard my thoughts. So whenever a negative thought arises about anybody or anything, immediately I use the name of Yogi Ram Surat Kumar because I am of his school. Yogi Ram Surat Kumar immediately takes the negative charge and transforms it into a positive charge. That name is a sacred name. You can use any name that you wish. Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna. I use the name of Yogi Ram Surat Kumar constantly, over and over. day after day after day. I go to it when I pray. I go to it when I eat. I go to it when I'm walking. I go to it when I have a negative thought or a negative emotion. And when identification hits me, as soon as I can, I go to Yogi Ram Sarai Kumar and I prostrate at his feet and I give everything to him, God, in that form, the divine. And conscience, I must tell you, is my refuge. Conscience is my hope. Conscience is my guide. Conscience is my path. Conscience is my Lord and Savior. Conscience is my breath and my life. It is the pearl of great price. And I'm laying down bits and pieces of identification in order to pay for conscience. More. Anybody, what can you say?
The question is, how do we work with identification?
Yes, and what has it shown you? What has it given you?
How do I work with identification? By seeing it's a dead end. Everything relative will die. But somehow I don't really believe that. I mean, I live as if that's not true. I strive to achieve or keep this entity, this identified person, surviving. And how to work with identification for me is by being willing to face myself. Good, we all have positive qualities, but the bad also, and the ugly, more to be willing to actually look at that and be with it, not push it away or pretend or cover it over, at least not to myself. And also to look at reality, the fleeting nature of it. There's a lot of grief there, but also I really do have the intuition that the end result of this, or where it leads, is to love, to compassion. You can be outraged at the world, but look at how much suffering there is. I think by being willing to look at my own identification, I see how much pain and suffering it causes others. And that opens my heart a little bit more.
It's the opening of the heart, which is the aim of all spiritual practice, I think. Do you agree?
Can I verify that completely? It seems that way to me.
Only in myself do I see that.
Well, another thing, Red Hawk, is that to verify for oneself, how can you trust that? If we're identified and really just focused on ourselves and so don't see clearly, how do we know something for sure? Can we trust ourselves? What would you say?
I have to see it and feel it. If I can't see it and feel it, I don't trust it. And Chandrika said there's inquiry, and I think that's a good point. And there is also intuition and inspiration, which come from a higher source. And they are constantly feeding information to me, not in words.
And you can distinguish that from imagination.
Absolutely. Because imagination uses words, and it always has me at the center. Intuition and inspiration don't have me at the center. They are objective and general. They are impulses. They come in a lightning impulse in which I know the whole content without words. The mind will immediately want to grab hold and begin to translate them into language. But they don't come that way. They come as truth straight to the heart, and the heart resonates. And that's how I know, because my heart resonates. I want to end with two things. One is I want to thank everyone who has attended tonight for helping me to work through this problem as part of my ongoing investigation. You've been a very big help to me, and I'm grateful to you. I want to read from G.W. Goodwin. G.W. Goodwin is a mystery man. He appeared on the internet years ago and began downloading these remarkable teachings on the fourth way. And then he disappeared. And I happened to catch the moment when he began to appear, and I copied down reams and reams of his teaching. And if you Google G.W. Goodwin, you won't find anything. It can't be found. Okay, so I'm going to read here. Quote, "Love is a higher emotion, an emotion that lacks any sentimentality, an emotion that is untainted by religious imagination. It must become a central point in one's work. This central point is a standard against which one can always compare one's immediate, ordinary reactions and feelings and disbelieve them. Using this finer emotion that one has verified as a standard, one can begin the constant process of comparing all of one's impulsive thoughts and emotions against this knowledge of objective reason. That is the beginning of the development of will over identification. Long observation of identification begin the awakening of conscience, and conscience can awaken the will to intervene and stop identification. Our level of identification attracts our life, unquote. I love you. I can't help it. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing I want to do about it. I thank you with all my heart for paying attention to this fool, for inviting me into your homes momentarily, and I'm grateful for the help that you've offered. God bless you. Yogi Ram Surat Kumar.